What if I told you that one of the most nutritionally complete plants on Earth, a source of food so potent its seeds are considered a superfood, whose leaves rival the densest greens in vitamins and minerals, and whose fibers could clothe you, is a plant you are actively prohibited from cultivating in your own garden? What if this plant required no pesticides, thrived in poor soil, cleansed the land it grew on, and offered a more balanced protein than most animal products? Now, confront this reality. In countless jurisdictions, possessing the seeds of this plant is a legal act. Purchasing its processed oil or heart is commonplace. But the moment you place that same seed in the soil with the intent to grow it, you cross a legal boundary from consumer to potential criminal. We have normalized a profound disconnect. We are allowed to eat the fruit, but forbidden to grow the tree. This is not an oversight of law. It is the design of law. When a resource of such fundamental utility, a self-replicating source of nutrition, medicine, and material, is ring-fenced by legal peril, you are not witnessing a public safety measure. You are witnessing a control mechanism. The history of this plant's oppression is a textbook case of how commerce, when threatened by nature's efficiency, will reframe abundance as a crime. By the end of this investigation, you will know precisely what this plant is, the documented economic conspiracy that led to its criminalization, the powerful institutions that continue to profit from its restricted status, and the incalculable cost to human health and agricultural sovereignty. The story is a blueprint for how public policy can be weaponized against public good. This channel is dedicated to structural analysis. We dismantle official narratives by examining financial incentives, historical continuity, and suppressed data. Our process is evidentiary. We follow the capital, trace the legislation, and expose the conflict between proclaimed motives and documented actions. In a media environment that often polices the boundaries of acceptable inquiry, this work is essential. If you value investigations that connect corporate boardrooms to legislative chambers and kitchen tables, consider subscribing. Your support ensures that analysis untethered from commercial or ideological capture remains viable and visible. The subject is, again, industrial hemp, Cannabis sativa L., specifically its nutritional and agricultural dimensions. This is critical to reiterate. This is not a discussion about psychoactive properties. That persistent conflation is the deliberate legal and rhetorical trap that has held this plant captive for nearly a century. This is an analysis of food security, nutritional science, and agricultural policy that has been subverted by a decades-old economic campaign. Before you dismiss this based on ingrained cultural assumptions, you must perform a conscious reset. What you know about this plant is a deliberately engineered fragment of its reality. The prohibition was never rooted in toxicology. It was rooted in ledgers. The nutritional profile of the hemp plant renders the term superfood inadequate. It is a nutritional system. The seed, hemp seeds or hemp hearts, are a complete vegetarian protein. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, including elevated levels of branched-chain amino acids crucial for muscle synthesis, in a form more digestible to humans than soy, egg, or meat protein. Approximately 33% of the seed is pure protein. They are one of the world's richest sources of essential fatty acids, providing both omega-6 linoleic acid and omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid, in the ideal 3:1 ratio recognized by nutritionists as optimal for cardiovascular and cognitive health. They are densely packed with magnesium, iron, zinc, potassium, and vitamin E. The leaf. While less common in Western diets, hemp leaves are edible and highly nutritious, rich in fiber, minerals, and chlorophyll. They can be consumed fresh or dried. Biological interaction. The human body possesses an endocannabinoid system, ECS, a vast network of receptors and signaling molecules that regulate homeostasis, sleep, appetite, mood, immune response, and pain perception. The fatty acids and minor cannabinoids found in whole plant hemp nutritionally support the ECS, aiding its regulatory function. This is not a drug interaction. It is a nutritional one, akin to how amino acids support muscular function. The economic threat is explicit. This plant directly competes with the meat, dairy, and soy industries as a superior, land-efficient source of complete protein and essential fats. The pharmaceutical supplement industries as a broad-spectrum nutritional substrate that supports core regulatory systems, potentially obviating the need for numerous single-molecule supplements and synthetic medications aimed at system imbalances. The processed food industry as a whole, unprocessed food that requires no chemical additives, fortification, or complex supply chains. It is inherently scalable, incredibly cheap to produce at scale, and resistant to monopolization because its primary input is a seed that can be saved and replanted. It represents food sovereignty. This forces a fundamental question. If the hemp plant is this nutritionally profound, this agriculturally resilient, and this foundational to human health systems, why is its cultivation, the act of growing food, still a heavily regulated, often illegal activity? Why was this pillar of traditional agriculture systematically excised from our food system? The transition from staple to contraband was not a scientific decision. It was a corporate one. Agricultural foundation. Pre-20th century hemp is one of humanity's first cultivated crops, grown for over 10,000 years for fiber, food, and medicine. It is a mandatory crop in American colonies. The USDA actively promotes it in the early 1900s. The industrial inflection point, 1930s technological innovation. The decorticator threatens to make hemp processing so efficient it would dominate the paper, textile, and emerging plastics markets. This places it on a collision course with powerful financial interests. The coalition forms. Key figures with direct financial conflicts orchestrate the response. William Randolph Hearst, Hearst Paper Manufacturing Division, owns millions of acres of timberland. Cheap hemp paper threatens his empire. He controls a national chain of newspapers. The DuPont Corporation has just patented nylon, a synthetic fiber, and processes for making plastics and paper from wood pulp and petroleum. DuPont's 1937 annual report to shareholders explicitly states that the company's future growth depends on converting these petrochemical innovations into commercial products. Natural hemp competition was untenable. Andrew Mellon, Treasury Secretary, DuPont's primary banker, appoints Harry J. Anslinger, his future relative, to head the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, creating the perfect regulatory weapon. The legal strike, 1937, leveraging Hearst newspapers to run sensational, racist propaganda about marijuana. Anslinger testifies before a brief, stage-managed congressional hearing. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 passes, using punitive taxation to destroy the commercial hemp industry. The medical tincture is removed from the pharmacopoeia soon after. The permanent ban, 1970, the Controlled Substances Act, crafted with Anslinger's consultation, places all cannabis, including zero-THC hemp, in Schedule 1. This unscientific classification, made without the review required today, legally defined this food crop as more dangerous than cocaine and with no medical value, cementing the economic blockade. The public was manipulated through a coordinated campaign of deceit, linguistic hijacking. The familiar hemp and cannabis were replaced with the foreign-sounding marijuana to stoke xenophobic fears against Mexican immigrants. Fabricated science media complicity. Hearst papers published hysterical articles linking the plant to violence, insanity, and sexual deviance. Films like Reefer Madness were presented as documentary truth. Racialized scapegoating. Anslinger's strategy explicitly targeted minority communities, testifying that marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind, used by Mexicans, Negroes, and jazz musicians. Strategic conflation. The distinct, non-psychoactive industrial and nutritional plant was intentionally lumped together with all other varieties to taint it by association, making the fear campaign simpler to prosecute. This was a commercial disinformation campaign, using state power and media control to eliminate a market competitor by destroying its public image. The consequences of this economic protectionism are vast and ongoing. The criminalization of agriculture. Thousands of individuals have been arrested and incarcerated for the act of cultivating a plant, even for personal nutritional use. These arrests destroy lives, families, and livelihoods. The loss of food sovereignty. Generations of farmers were denied access to a high-yield, low-cost, soil-regenerating food crop, forced into dependency on patented, input-intensive seed and chemical systems. Nutritional deprivation. The public was systematically denied access to a foundational, nutrient-dense food source, arguably contributing to widespread deficiencies in essential fatty acids, magnesium, and complete plant proteins. Disparate enforcement. As with all drug prohibition, enforcement has fallen disproportionately on communities of color, exacerbating social inequities and eroding trust in institutions. The cost is measured in lost health, lost freedom, and lost resilience. Contemporary evidence completely dismantles the prohibition's foundation. Scientific reversal. The discovery and mapping of the endocannabinoid system, ECS, in the 1990s provided the biological rationale for the plant's historical medicinal and nutritional use. The World Health Organization has stated clearly that CBD presents no public health risk. Failed prophecies. In regions where hemp cultivation has been legalized, none of the predicted societal harms have occurred. Agricultural diversity has improved, new industries have formed, and no public health crisis has emerged from people consuming hemp seeds or oil. Institutional hypocrisy. The U.S. government holds a patent on cannabinoids as neuroprotectants. Major food and pharmaceutical corporations are now racing to patent hemp-derived compounds and products, profiting from the very biology they helped outlaw. The hypocrisy is systemic. The plant is illegal, while its isolated corporate-controlled components are celebrated commodities. The slow pace of change is explained by entrenched financial interests. The pharmaceutical nutraceutical industry, a whole plant food that supports core human regulatory systems, is a direct threat to markets for synthetic antidepressants, painkillers, sleep aids, and single-molecule nutritional supplements. The industrial agribusiness complex, companies like Bayer, Monsanto, and Corteva, which profit from selling patented GMO seeds, pesticides, and fertilizer for crops like soy and corn, are threatened by a hardy, low-input, open-pollinated competitor like hemp. The processed food industry, a locally grown source of complete protein and healthy fats, undermines centralized processing and long-distance commodity transportation. Law enforcement corrections institutions, budgets, staffing, and asset forfeiture revenues are partially dependent on the continued enforcement of drug laws, including those against cultivation. Legalization of home and commercial hemp cultivation threatens these interdependent revenue streams and power structures, explaining the resistance. Reframe the entire narrative. This was never about protecting you. It was never about health or safety. Deadly, addictive opioids are Schedule II prescription drugs. Refined sugar, a driver of metabolic disease, is unregulated. This was about control over the food supply, over the definition of medicine, over what farmers can grow. It was about profit, protecting centralized, patent-driven industries from decentralized, natural abundance. It was about manufacturing dependence on corporate seeds, corporate drugs, and corporate food. You were not naive. You were subjected to a long-term, multimedia propaganda operation designed to make you fear one of your most potent nutritional allies. The imperative now is personal verification. Read the USDA Handbook on Hemp from 1913. Examine the nutritional panels on a bag of hemp hearts. Research the testimony from the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act hearings. Look at the investors in modern pharmaceutical cannabinoid patents. Ask, with deliberate focus, who benefits from a system where you can purchase a processed food product but are forbidden from growing its source? Who gains from maintaining a legal distinction between a seed in a bag and that same seed in the soil? The discussion is about autonomy. How do we reclaim the right to cultivate nutrition and resilience? Your critical analysis is the first step. If this investigation has reconnected these severed dots, your conscious engagement helps rebuild a framework based on evidence, not engineered consent. Ultimately, this is not about a single plant. It is about the right to access, cultivate, and benefit from the tools of survival and health that the natural world provides. That right was legislated away. Understanding the mechanics of that theft is the prerequisite to its restoration.